I'll unmute my mic. That'll help. The transfer portal gives, the transfer portal takes away. TCU gained 2 players in the portal this weekend. They also lost 2 players this weekend. We'll talk about that and more, and an all-time ref show in Lawrence, Kansas that cost TCU a basketball game. All that and more coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please also subscribe wherever it is you like to take in podcasts in its audio form, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever the case may be. Thank you for listening and consuming this content, though, however it is you do that and whenever it is that you do that. It's Monday. We're starting a new week. TCU basketball, the men's team gets hosed in Lawrence, Kansas. They fall to the Jayhawks 83-81. The TCU women's team, big speed bump, losing at home to Oklahoma State, but maybe more importantly, losing Sedona Prince for an extended period of time. She suffered a broken finger against Baylor, announced that on Instagram earlier this week. But we're going to start today with football. The transfer portal gives, the transfer portal takes away. TCU added a few players. They got a quarterback in Ken Seals from Vanderbilt. They got a cornerback on the defensive side of the ball, JaTravis Broughton from Utah. I talked about both these guys late last week. Jeremy Clark from Horned Frog Blitz 247 Sports. He's done a great job of reporting official visits, what's happening, who they're bringing in, who the Frogs are pursuing. So we'll start in the secondary. JaTravis Broughton is a very experienced corner from Utah, and he announced on Sunday that he is officially committed to the TCU Horned Frogs. In his career, he's appeared in 46 games. He's had 29 starts, and over his career finished with 126 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 interception, and 11 pass breakups. So not getting a lot of turnovers, not a guy that's going to turn the ball over, but really good at pass breakups, around the ball a lot, sure tackler. And as many people have pointed out, I think the biggest thing with JaTravis is he's played under Kyle Whittingham, who's one of the great defensive coaches in the country, a Utah program that hangs their hat on being physical, being good on the defensive side of the ball. And he's been able to play essentially since he was a true freshman. He's been in the lineup in some capacity and mainly as a starter and has excelled and has done a really good job there. So he'll join a cornerback room, with Avery Helm, who transferred in from Florida last year, also Channing Canada, who came in from the JUCO ranks this past season. Vernon Glover's a young guy they're hoping will step up. You're losing Josh Newton. And Broughton is someone who I think the biggest thing he's going to bring to the table is just snap count, the ability to understand and pick up a defense quickly, having a good idea of what it takes to play in the Power 5 level, at what you have to do at that position to be successful. And I mentioned this before, this is a position group that I think is going to have a lot more responsibility, whether it be in man coverage and zone coverage. Now, interestingly enough, I talked to Bronco Blameyer from his own YouTube channel. He covers Boise State, and I was discussing with him the Andy Avalos defense, and I was asking him about, how aggressive is Avalos as a play caller? Because a big complaint that I had, and a lot of you had, with the end of the Joe Gillespie era, and honestly just the Joe Gillespie era in its entirety from start to finish, was his insistence on playing pretty conservatively, only having 3 guys rush. You have your 3 down linemen, they're coming after the quarterback, and you're not going to blitz a lot. You're not bringing extra pressure. You're not varying your looks. You're not changing your scheme up and trying to fool the quarterback. And so Avalos is going to do that. Now, one thing that Blameyer mentioned, and that interview's up, we did it on Friday if you want to check it out, is that Avalos will blitz occasionally. And I mean, first off, they had TCU was one of the lowest blitzing teams at the Power 5 level last year. The only team that blitzed less than them was Northwestern. Also, this is not the traditional 3-3-5 in that there's going to be 4 down linemen at times, there's going to be 5 down linemen at times. So I think just from a base front, you're going to have more people rushing the passer. And hopefully it also includes bringing more pressure. The thing is, if you're going to bring pressure and if you're going to vary your coverage looks, then that puts pressure on your corners and your safeties to execute those things well and to understand what you want to do. And so with Broughton coming in, you have someone with a lot of experience who can do that. Now, you gained a player at that corner position. You also lost a player at corner, and Donovan Saunders from Cal Poly, who played at the FCS level this past year. And it was going to be a big jump up to Power 5 football, which he's still going to play Power 5 football. Saunders announced that he's flipping to Texas A&M. So he's going to join Mike Elko. And, hey, Mike Elko's a good coach. It's one of those things. It's not the end of the world, right? But I'm also not going to downplay who this person is just because suddenly he's not coming to TCU. I was excited about his potential. He had a really good coverage grading according to Pro Football Focus. Now, yes, the question with him was going to be, how is he going to handle the jump to major college football? But Mike Elko is a great defensive mind. He seems to be a great defensive evaluator. He obviously saw the same things that the TCU coaching staff saw in Saunders and others who gave him that offer. And so he's moving on now. This is not a cornerback room that I think is especially thin. I feel like they're in a good position. Maybe you go add one more. Safety seems to be the bigger priority. You essentially trade JaTravis for Saunders in a way. I would have been cool with having both of them, though, and that's just the way it goes. TCU also added a quarterback, Ken Seals from Vandy, who is someone that I've talked about for about a week now. And Seals, again, a lot of snaps in his career. 2020 was where he played the most, basically started the entire season in that COVID-shortened year, did it as a freshman for the Commodores, had a 64% completion percentage, almost 2,000 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Now over his career, the red flag or the thing that jumps out, I guess from a negative standpoint, 22 picks, has thrown 28 touchdowns, though, and has played essentially in every season except for 2022 when he dealt with injuries and was in and out of the lineup. Now, Ken Seals did tell Jeremy Clark from Horned Frog Blitz and 247, they do great work. A couple of things that stood out to me from an interview he did. One was, he's from Azle, so I guess it's not shocking. But this was kind of a dream school situation for him. He always wanted to come to TCU. So it's sort of coming full circle for him now that after spending time at Vandy, he's going to make that move. He also said, for those of you that are interested in a quarterback battle, that think that's the way to go, that feel like Josh Hoover at least needs somebody in that quarterback room who's going to push him, because Haas Haney's coming in a true freshman. And I know there's some of you that think, man, Haas should be the guy right away. I'm not in that camp. I do wonder if TCU maybe has some special packages for him or find some creative ways to get him on the field and use his athleticism. But I think as far as him taking snaps as your traditional drop back quarterback, I don't see that happening much. Seals can be a bridge guy in between Josh and Haas, though. And he said in this interview that the coaching staff has told me he's going to have an opportunity to compete. Now, what kind of opportunity is that? I don't know. But, obviously that's a conversation that they had with him and not me. I think Josh Hoover is going to be the guy going into next season. That's just kind of speculation on my part, just based on the fact that even when Chandler Morris was healthy at the end of the year, Josh Hoover was getting the snaps. I think he showed some really good things. He showed some flashes. Now you're banking on potential here. There were also some bad turnovers. There were some bad decisions. But, that's young QB play to a certain extent. Here's the good news about Seals. It seems like he's comfortable. If that competition doesn't go his way, it seems like he's comfortable being a backup QB. This is a school that he has ties to, that he's excited about. So I don't think there's much of a Chance Nolan situation. Excuse the pun there. But where Nolan got on campus and during fall camp, and within a few days was like, well, I'm not going to play. I'm not sure I want to do this. I think I want to move on from football completely. I don't feel like that's something you have to worry about with Seals. He knows the drill here. Okay, there's an opportunity to compete, but most likely he'll be the second guy. And, we saw this year it's important to have a competent backup quarterback. There was a lot of hand-wringing about what's going to happen if Josh Hoover has to come in the game, and that ended up happening, right? Chandler Morris went down with an injury, which was unfortunate, and Josh had to step in and play. You're always one snap away if you're a second-team guy. And it's also just good to have that experience and that pedigree as someone who you can bounce ideas off of, can be helpful in the film room, hopefully can be helpful on the field. on the sidelines during drive, Josh comes off. Hey, this is what I saw. This is my perspective on things. All those things I think are going to be positives for TCU. The other player that the Frogs lost that was committed, the transfer portal player that was committed to TCU that is now moving on, Howard Sampson, offensive tackle from North Texas. He is now headed to North Carolina. He committed to the Tar Heels as of Sunday. Now, the thing with Sampson was he's one of the many offensive linemen that they brought in, and he didn't play a whole lot at North Texas last year. Didn't play for the Eagles a lot, but great size. 6'8", 325, high ceiling type of player, young player, so someone that can come in and develop. Now, a couple of responses I got on Twitter today. Mando Bull asked me, like, what's the deal? Why did they lose the lineman now? What's going on within why are they losing players? My friend Alex Frank said simply NIL. And I think that's part of the equation, right? Probably the biggest part of the equation. Maybe there's more opportunity at North Carolina combined with a bigger payday, and he's moving on somewhere else. My friend Tommy Fisher was like, well, Howard wasn't a guy that was going to contribute right away. Anyway, to me, this isn't a huge loss. So, yeah, I agree with you. Like, in the immediate, this is not a huge loss. Like, I think this is a guy that wasn't going to start this year. If he wasn't starting at North Texas, I didn't see a path for him to start immediately at TCU coming into the season. But the Frogs are simultaneously trying to get guys that can have immediate impact on the offensive line, but also rebuild this O-line room and get players that you can develop and that can carry the torch in the next few seasons. Because later in the Gary Patterson era, there wasn't a huge emphasis. Either there wasn't a huge emphasis or they just swung and missed on a lot of these O-line recruiting battles and commits. So there's not a plethora of guys that are young players that have the potential to develop and become starters later on. And so I thought Sampson was a really good pickup from the perspective of, okay, take a flyer on a guy who's just got great physical gifts, and with the right coaching and right system and maybe some increased maturity, in the weight room, whatever the case may be, could lead to a player that could be really good for you down the line. Now, the good news is they've gone heavy on the offensive line from a recruiting standpoint, both in 2023 and the 2024 class. And they've got some guys who are kind of scratching the surface of their potential, maybe have great physical gifts. Tobias Steps comes to mind. Wesley Harvey comes to mind. Players that were a little under the radar, but seem to have the tools that would make them a successful offensive lineman at the next level. So you have players like that. But I thought Sampson would be a good addition. Ultimately, they lose him to North Carolina. This is a byproduct of – so basically, even if these guys sign, they're not signing letters of intent. They're just signing financial aid agreements. So until classes start, they can just kind of freely go about their business and move wherever, which is a huge miss by the NCAA. And it's one of the many unintended consequences of what's become the player empowerment era, which, listen, I totally understand. For years, you had a revenue model that didn't make any sense. And anybody that looked at it was like, listen, the players should be getting a cut of this. But at the same time, there's been some unintended consequences to it. And it's because the NCAA, even though this issue was blatantly out there for years, they just kept kicking the can down the road and didn't do anything about it. And so then you finally put yourself in a situation where it's just open season and there's no real rules. And now you get things like this where guys can just kind of freely move and go about their business. And I mean, I think there has to be more regulation within what is a good system from giving the players freedom, but there needs to be more set rules and regulations moving forward. But at the moment, there's not. And so Frogs lose Donovan Saunders, corner from Cal Poly to A&M. They lose Howard Sampson, tackle from North Texas and North Carolina. But they also gain quarterback Ken Seals from Vanderbilt. And on the defense side of the ball, corner JaTravis Broughton from Utah. When we come back, I know a lot of you saw it. You've reacted to it. I've reacted to it a little bit on social media. TCU men's basketball probably played their best game of the year. Gave an outstanding effort at Allen Fieldhouse. Should have won that game. They did not. We'll talk about it next. Here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. NFL playoffs coming up. Man, how about the Dallas Cowboys? They land the 2 seed in the playoffs by winning a game against the Commanders today, closing the season strong. And FanDuel has this deal still going on. If you're ready to bet on the NFL and specifically on the playoffs, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon today. Just put a $5 bet down, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 in free money if you just put a $5 bet down. Now, listen, I have a 2.7 GPA, and I was a sports broadcasting major. That tells you a little bit about my academic prowess. But I know a good deal when I hear it. And I wasn't great at math, but I know that's a great exchange. $5 for $150. You'll take that every day. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Also have the FanDuel app that's super safe and secure and easy to use. You can bet on money lines. You can bet on spreads. They have all kinds of parlays that you can get involved with. FanDuel, official betting partner of the NFL and proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So, I wouldn't say it's a rule that I have, but one thing that I just generally, my perspective on sports, something as a fan, as a media member, whatever, that I feel pretty strongly about. I hate blaming officials for the outcomes of a game, even in a high leverage moment. And yes, officiating can have a huge impact on the game. We've all seen football games where a pass interference call or an illegal contact call or a missed call can change a game on a dime. And basketball is really prevalent too. You got crunch time possessions late in a ball game, a call's missed or a soft foul's called, and it can change the game. But ultimately, my perspective on it is there's so many game-changing moments within a ball game. There's so many things that a team can do to win or lose. You can't blame it solely on the officials. You cannot leave it at the officials' feet. But I'll tell you what. I'm watching TCU Kansas, and the Frogs fall 83-81 to KU at Allen Fieldhouse. And man, TCU played their best game of the season. Trey Tennyson was outstanding. Jameer Nelson Jr. did some really good things off the bench. Emmanuel Miller was great. They got good bench minutes from Xavier Cork, Chuck O'Bannon. Avery Anderson's been really good since he was inserted in the starting lineup. Ernest Uday made some plays. On the other side, Hunter Dickinson from Kansas looked like a player of the year type player. But late in that ball game, with a minute left, TCU is up 2. Kansas has the ball. They're swinging it around the perimeter. Ernest Uday does a fantastic job. He reads as someone swings it from the wing to the top of the key that there's probably an entry pass coming to Dickinson. He fights around and fronts Hunter, and they don't lob it up to him. They just kind of throw a straight line chest pass, and Uday steals it. He sort of deflects it, and the ball falls on the ground. As the ball falls on the ground, he throws his elbows back. He throws his arms back. I don't really know why, but, I mean, I don't think it was an unnatural motion. I don't think it was something that he thought about or had intent to do. He just does it. His elbow hits Hunter Dickinson in the mouth. And the veteran that Hunter is, he sells it. He flops. He falls over very dramatically. And one thing that I noticed about Dickinson during that game, he had a tendency, like he would make a bucket and he would go down the floor and he would kind of do this. You know, soccer players, like they'll clap for the fans. They'll like give their applause to the fans. They'll like kind of run down and clap after a game typically. He'll do that after a bucket. He'll like come down and clap to the fans. It's a very odd mannerism that I just kind of picked up on. Well, he flopped like a soccer player in that moment. And to his credit, he sold it. It looks like TCU's going on a fast break. Instead, they blow the play dead, which it was explained to me because Micah Peavy basically slowed the action down. And I don't know if he was told to do that or if he just made this decision. But because he slowed the action down and didn't go on a fast break, the officials could stop the game. So they go to the monitor and they review it. And as I'm watching it in slow motion, I'm like, this doesn't look like a flagrant foul to me, but I feel like they're going to call it a flagrant foul. And sure enough, they called it a flagrant one. Dickinson gets 2 free throws. He makes them both. Kansas gets the ball back in a huge 4-point swing. Jayhawks go from down 2 to up 2. Now, TCU ended up coming down and tying the game. Micah Peavy had a putback. Dickinson scored again for the Jayhawks to take the lead. And then Jameer Nelson Jr. airballed the 3 at the buzzer. It was a deep 3. He kind of had a double clutch. It was a tough situation. He misses a shot at the buzzer, and that's your ball game. I would have loved to have seen Trey Tennyson get a look there. I don't know what the game plan was, but, man, Trey shot the ball lights out on Saturday. In fact, I want to look at that and see where it was. Yeah, 9 of 12 from the field, 6 of 8 from 3. But back to the call. By the letter of the law, I think it's a flagrant foul. But TCU got hosed, man. I mean, it wasn't – as an official, I think you have to look at that and just let it play out. Ernest didn't mean to do it. I don't think it was a completely unnatural motion. I don't know why he threw his arms back, but it happened in a split second. And it completely changed the ball game. I hate blaming officials. I don't like it. I think it's a lame excuse. But there is such a huge difference between TCU having the ball up 2 with a minute to go to the flip side of the Frogs having a 2-point deficit with about 45 seconds to go. It's just insane to me. It's insane how it played out. Now, there were some good things about that game. I think TCU played really well. As I mentioned, Trey Tennyson was great. It seems like Jameer Nelson Jr. has found some comfort coming off the bench. That's a good role for him. He's been a good scorer. He's been a good scoring punch. Coming off the bench, Emmanuel Miller has turned into a great player. He's been a good player for a few years. He's been a great player in 2024 and 2023 as well. This season, you know what I mean. He's been great in the mid-range. He's been great getting buckets down low. He took it to KJ Adams at times. He's a really good player. And I thought it was TCU's best effort of the season. The question is, they did some really good things against KU. Shot the ball well, scored in transition, turned Kansas over. At the end of the day, you're 0-1 in conference play. What's the follow-up act? Was this just a great effort in a situation where there were low expectations? And, sometimes, you have that where a team's like, all right, nobody believes in us. Nobody's expecting us to get this done. Let's go do it. Or is this the start of something good? Because if this is trending up, then that's great news. And it's going to be tough because your next 2 games are OU and Houston, and I actually think Houston might be a more complete team than Kansas. I wasn't super impressed with the guard play by KU on Saturday. I mean, Dickinson, I talked about him. He's like player of the year type player. And TCU didn't really have an answer for him. Uday and Cork did their best, but they couldn't really stop him. And he can score on all 3 levels, down low, in the mid-range, from 3. But Houston's got great guard play, led by LJ Cryer, who was at Baylor and transferred over. And they also play outstanding defense, and they slow the pace down, and they don't turn it over a lot. That's going to be a tough game. OU's an upstart team that's in the top 15, and it's a home game. It's going to be tough. You got to find a way to win, though. You can't start conference play 0-3. And that's what TCU's staring down. And a lot of it's because they had a game just stolen from them in Allen Fieldhouse. And I know a lot of Big 12 fans made the point, welcome to the party. It's not the first time. This is how it goes. I get that. But, man, what a game-changing call. And what just bad luck. I mean, he wasn't trying to do it. He wasn't trying to elbow him in the face. He was just he was just trying to gather the ball. It was unintentional. It wasn't a natural movement. Let it play out. But that's not what happened. And the Frogs take a tough loss because of it. When we come back, on the other side, TCU women, they also lost on Saturday. And some tough news on the injury front. We'll do that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We live in an unpredictable world. I hate that that's the case, but it is. And Jace Medical allows you to prepare for the potential things that we don't want to think a lot about, but that could happen. You want to prepare for yourself and for your family. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin, and we're in the middle of the worst flu season in a decade. There can't be a more helpless feeling than if one of my kids got sick and a supply chain issue kept them from the medication they needed. Thankfully, Jace Medical can help you. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics treating a long list of bacterial illnesses and more. This could be helpful to any family. Visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order today. Again, that website is jacemedical.com. The promo code is LOCKEDON, and you can get $20 off your first order today. Jace Medical, home of the Jace case. Be prepared if something happens and you need help for you or your family. JaceMedical.com. Promo code is locked on to get $20 off your first purchase. So the TCU women played Oklahoma State over the weekend, and the Frogs fell by a final score of 67-59. They shot 35% from 3. Tough day shooting the basketball. The big news, though, Sedona Prince announced this on Instagram. She broke her finger on the very first play of that game against Baylor. And I remember I was at that game live, and she won the tip, and she goes down. They try to give her the ball in the high post, and it bounced off her hand. And I remember her shaking her hand, shaking her, finger a couple times and thinking, she must have done something there. And she missed a lot of, baskets that I think traditionally she would make. She was taking some fadeaway jumpers later in the game that I was like, why are you not being more aggressive going to the hoop? But I think it was just a matter of being injured. But anyway, she's going to be out for a while. And this really affects the Frogs on both sides of the court, but especially defensively, because they've been playing zone and they kind of funnel everything to her, and she's been blocking shots and has done a great job. But now she'll be out for the foreseeable future, and you saw a team that looked pretty lost without her on Saturday. Their next game is against Texas, which is going to be a huge test, and honestly, just a tough ball game, even if Sedona was healthy. So got to try to pack up as many wins as you can with her out, but she's going to miss some time, and the Frogs fell to Oklahoma State on Saturday. Wanted to, before we go, mention a couple things about the NFL and some former Frogs that had good days. Kendre Miller, he was active today against the Falcons. He had 13 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. Really cool to see him break out. It's been a tough season for Kendre. He's dealt with some injuries. He's been behind Alvin Kamara, obviously, and also Jamal Williams. But he had a really good day at the office, scored a touchdown, had 73 yards, averaged about 6 yards a carry. That's a huge springboard going into the offseason. Unfortunately for the Saints, they didn't make the playoffs. Bucs ended up winning the NFC South, but they did end the season with a big win over the Falcons. And Kendre was active and was great. So I hope that gives the organization a lot of faith in him moving forward and going into the offseason. Also, Jalen Reagor, Patriots played the Jets. He had a catch for 33 yards, and that was it. Patriots offense is a mess, and it was a snowy day. But Reagor had a nice end of the season. He had a kickoff return for a touchdown against the Bills last week. He was active today, had a reception. It's been a tough go for Reagor in the NFL. The Eagles' tenure didn't work out. He was with the Vikings for a little bit. That didn't work out. But maybe he's found a place with the Patriots. We'll see. It was at least a good end of the season. Got some good tape out there. Hopefully that leads to some more opportunities for him going into next year. Thank you for tuning in tonight or on Monday morning, whatever it was that is and where you listen. I'm Steven Simcox. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. It's your team every day.